Right, earlier today, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who is chairman of the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, called upon Attorney General William Barr to conduct an immediate review into Planned Parenthood's unlawful participation in the Paycheck Protection Program, which was a part of the coronavirus relief measure. Rubio, who was joined by 94 members of the House of Representatives, said, quote, "There is no ambiguity in the legislation that passed or public record around its passage that organizations such as Planned Parenthood, whose parent organization has close to $500 million in assets, is not eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program," end quote. The request came after yesterday's revelation that nearly 40 affiliates of Planned Parenthood collectively received $80 million. Joining now to talk more about this is Congressman Dan Bishop, who represents the 9th Congressional District of North Carolina. He is also a member of the House Small Business Committee and joined Senator Rubio in the letter to the Attorney General. Congressman Bishop, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Tony, thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to be with you.
You signed this letter along with Senator Rubio to the Attorney General. Why is this happening? I mean, how in the world, when the legislation was so clear, did Planned Parenthood end up with $80 million?
It is disheartening. It is outrageous. And I agree with what Senator Rubio has said. I joined the letter. There is no argument whatsoever that has any substance to it that these are independent entities. The affiliation rules under the small business program, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the SBA 7A program that was used to implement that, precludes an entity like nonprofit entities. Planned Parenthood Federation of America has about 16,000 nationwide employees, and again, the affiliation rules take these independent or these separate affiliates and treat them as one entity. So there's not a good faith argument, in my view, and in the view of the others, the experts who drafted the legislation, that they would be able to do this. So they simply have engaged in a violation of the law.
Well, our team, our government affairs team, was involved in the drafting of the legislation, both with the White House and with members of Congress, in terms of the relief effort, making sure that nonprofits were involved that were required to shut down as a result of the government shutdown. But it was very clear that there was intentionality in precluding organizations like Planned Parenthood, as you said, 16,000 employees. That's not a small business. So somewhere there was a breakdown in the. Now I understand that their application could have reflected mistruth. I'll be kind, but the administration, the SBA, should have been more vigilant and diligent in approving these applications.
One thing that Senator Rubio said that I thought was a very cogent comment is that whoever has assisted in the improper origination of these forgivable PPP loans in violation of the affiliation rules, even if it's someone at SBA, will have to be held to account. And the Trump Justice Department is going to have to get after that. And so we've made that point. When Administrator Carranza comes before the Small Business Committee the next occasion, I can guarantee you that I and other Republican members will be asking some very difficult questions of her.
Yeah, and I understand completely that you're at the mercy of the Democratic majority in terms of when and if they will schedule such a hearing. But certainly I would think that Senator Rubio, who immediately jumped on this and has been discussing it as you have when the revelations were first made, that I would hope that some answers would be forthcoming pretty soon, both from SBA and from, obviously, the Attorney General.
One way or the other, Tony, I think we'll get an opportunity to get to the bottom of it soon. SBA, of course, has demanded the return of the money and has now taken the position that they clearly were precluded from participating in the program. So we'll see what happens. I know a bunch of your listeners will say, well, why didn't you do something to make it clearer? And folks would need to understand in that situation, and as you said, you all were involved, but you're talking about a program in the middle of the COVID pandemic designed to keep small businesses afloat,
right?
And something that moved pretty quickly, but that really didn't leave any uncertainty here. It should not have happened.
Well, legislation has to be crafted in such a way that it is not selective in who is. I mean, it has to be precisely worded, and I know that's
right.
You can't just put in there.
It's got to be a neutral principle.
Right. You can't just put in there that Planned Parenthood can't receive the funds. You have to have categories of organizations, and the point here being that this is not a small business. This is a massive operation, the nation's largest abortion provider, and kind of like a terrorist organization, they have cells, and so they have affiliates, and I mean that's how they operate, and so, but collectively, I mean, think about this for a moment, and I mean I know you do, so this is kind of a rhetorical statement, but they receive $500 million a year in taxpayer money. Planned Parenthood does, both in federal, state, and local. And as is pointed out in the letter by Senator Rubio, they are sitting on millions of dollars. Why do they need to be getting these emergency funds?
Well, and particularly when you consider that that's the reason, as you said, the affiliation rules aren't designed for Planned Parenthood. It simply applies to them because they're this massive organization.
And to that point, Congressman, I hate to cut you off, but to that point, other entities that initially applied for it and then realized that they didn't meet the criteria because of their affiliation, because they have multiple affiliates, they withdrew from the program.
And those, Tony, were frankly far more arguable cases. Some large restaurant operating businesses and the like Shake Shack and I forget the name of the steakhouse. Won't come to me. But those organizations, there was some argument about their situation that was a closer call than this one. This just seems like it's blatantly abusive, and it will need to be rectified.
Well, I think in part Planned Parenthood has a permanent position at the trough, and so they just assume that any time that there is government money to be had, they're going to be first in line to get it. And again, there was a lot of energy put into this legislation. I know it moved faster than anything Congress has ever done before that I can recall. But a lot of energy was focused on this one issue. So I think, as the senator said, there's no ambiguity in terms of whether or not they qualified for this program.
Yeah, but it's very disheartening. You see that number. I mean, it's just stunning to me. $80 million into the hands of abortionists through this program is one of several reasons we've had to be disheartened of late. So I'm torn up about it.
Well, Congressman, before I let you go, what else is on the horizon as we look at the response to the coronavirus? I mean, we're still in the midst of this, kind of a second wave coming forward, some say. Of course, the media, I always take everything they say with a grain of salt. Anything they can do to make this administration look bad, they will. But what's on the horizon? What should our listeners be looking for?
Well, one other issue on the subject of life is there have been those seeking to weaken the protections of women against the derelict dangerous prescribing of abortifacients, and that's something I've been participating in trying to work against as well. More generally, as coronavirus continues, I think now Senator McConnell is moving toward another bill, and of course we've seen a lot of Democrat messaging bills that have been passed on the floor, really not expecting to become law, but the pieces are beginning to come together on a further bill. It's probably too early to say much about it, except that I think we'll be giving attention to issue of business liabilities to addressing working capital needs and the like. So much more work to happen, and I do think we're starting to see that on the horizon, whereas before it's been just sort of an indefinite waiting period.
Yeah, and I think people are beginning to realize that this is not going to be over quickly, that this is going to alter the way we conduct business until we get a good, firm handle on the virus with a vaccine and get it contained. You know, it's going to, as you said, the liability aspect expose businesses, nonprofits, to the trial lawyers who would love to sue over anything. And so there's a lot of work still to be done. Hopefully more thought and precision will go into the execution of these policies in the days ahead.
Yeah, I hope so too, Tony. It's been a pleasure to be with you to discuss it, and look forward to continuing to work with you guys. We got a lot to do.
All right, Congressman, appreciate your leadership on the issues that we care so much about. Congressman Dan Bishop of North Carolina represents the 9th Congressional District and one of the true blue members of Congress.